What's going on, dudes? My name is Terrence Latimer. I am an information communications and technology consultant based in the Mojave Desert. Hope this video finds you well. My format is a little bit different today. Again, if you've been following my journey at all, I've been having some technology challenges with my camera the past couple of weeks. So hopefully you can just bear with me as I sort of massage some of the kinks of this process. But, definitely wanted to continue our conversation as it relates to implementing some of our favorite technologies into our enterprises so that we can be that much more successful. So, a little bit about me. Again, you just heard I'm an information communications and technology consultant based in the Mojave Desert. My focus is on helping organizations, particularly through this lens of IT and technology, right? The communications aspect is, I use communications ideally to bridge the two, right? Which is information and technology. And so, today we're going to talk a little bit more about natural language processing, which, we'll dive here to in a bit. But again, ultimately, my job, my responsibility is in helping your organization, you as an individual, and your enterprises develop a healthier and more efficient relationship with technology. So broadly, my focus is on internal communications and external communications. If you understand the overlap between those two, you then begin to understand the importance of data, which is another way that I like to help you, develop more efficient or better relationships with technology. I also help with product development. So in helping to launch and scale cool digital products, services, events, apps, websites, et cetera, et cetera. And then enterprise resource planning, right? Typically we all work for organizations, these enterprises that are then responsible for navigating the resources that we have available to us, including technology, to then plan the way that we go to market, right? Which is the way that we add value to our customers and ideally, the resources that we sort of provide to our teammates so that they can then be that much more efficient with their jobs. So super excited to be chatting with you today about natural language processing and specifically about applying natural language processing to enterprise resource planning. If you've been following me or if you've been following along on LinkedIn at all this week, you understand that, again, natural language processing is a key component of artificial intelligence and of machine learning. And indicative of that is, or that works in collaboration, I should say, with what are known as large language models, which we'll dive into here in a little bit. But essentially, these then are the key elements for product development, for understanding our users, understanding the challenges that they are having based off of the language, the keywords, the phrases, the syntax, the vernacular that they use as they then go about this process of interacting or engaging with our enterprises. And so again, this week we're doing things a little bit different in that typically I like to just give you a sort of point of view training. This week it's going to be a little bit more interactive in that I've got 3 case studies that I'm going to be walking you through, or 3 examples of the integration of natural language processing into some of our favorite enterprises so that you get an understanding of how that technology is being used in order to develop more impactful enterprises. But before we get started, let's just go ahead and take a pause break here in order to define what natural language processing is, just so that we are all on the same page. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen so that you can see the definition that I'm talking about. All right, and so our definition is brought to you today by IBM. And IBM states, well, what is natural language processing? IBM states, natural language processing, or NLP, refers to the branch of computer science, and more specifically, the branch of artificial intelligence, or AI, concerned with giving computers the ability to understand text and spoken words in much the same way that human beings can. And so NLP, or natural language processing, and I've actually been hearing, another acronym, or NLP, or another meaning for NLP, which we can talk about here in a bit, is neuro-linguistic processing, that I would encourage you to study. And I've heard the 2 definitions used sort of interchangeably. But that's actually going to be some of the homework that I focus on this week is understanding the nuances or the difference between the two. But NLP combines computational linguistics, rule-based modeling of human language with statistical, machine learning, and deep learning models. Together, these technologies enable computers to process human language in the form of text or voice data and to understand, and I really do use the quotations here, understand its full meaning, complete with the speaker or writer's intent and sentiment. And so, as we all understand, understanding words and communications and language is a very complicated process that involves lots of different things in the form of, there's a physics to language and communications. And then, in the form of, you're hearing me verbalize or you're hearing me, leverage audio sounds or audio, excuse me, in order to communicate a message in real time. And in order that second aspect of hearing, right, is another physical reaction that needs to take place as I'm communicating things to you. Now, when things start getting a little bit interesting is in the form of the way that we encode and decode information in real time as we're seeing it. And that's why, in a lot of different ways, I use this analogy all the time. The human brain is just so fascinating, right? It's able to do all these really amazing things in the form of your heart beating and your blood pumping and, you being able to remember to breathe and you're listening and experiencing all these different sensations in real time. And, rather than it being overwhelming, you're typically very poised and are able to share information, not and process information in real time. And that then is when the beauty can happen in the form of collaboration, learning, understanding, community development, et cetera, et cetera. So when we think about this process of natural language processing, something that is just I want you to be just completely mindful of is that as it relates to language and the way that we process language, well, technology has always had a place in that. I've maybe in ancient Egypt might have had an idea, and I really wanted to get other people involved and to understand what it is that I wanted them to focus on, and so I might have taken out a slate and a chisel and started tapping some hieroglyphics into a message in order to then communicate that to other people, right? Well, I mean, as rudimentary as it might be, that is an example of technology or tools being implemented in order to, ideally, like, I mean, that first example of like publishing, really, but to provide others with the ability to process my language in a methodology that feels natural to them, right? And again, based off of the technology that's involved, that then has, in a lot of different ways, influenced the way that we define what is natural. Natural, for all intents and purposes, in 2023, we consume or we process language in the form of reading and writing and watching videos and listening to podcasts, right? And a lot of that then is indicative of the available technologies. And so if we then consider, some of the other digital tools or systems that we have in place that allows us to manipulate and to share and process information, what I really hope you walk away with today is just understanding that natural language processing is this sort of next iteration and progression of this process. However, machines are typically limited, and not to say that you shouldn't fear these tools, right? I mean, I don't want to, make that argument. But at the same time, I'm of the belief that tools are, only as efficient or, you can't really blame the tool. You really need to understand the underlying purpose and, for all intents and purposes, the intention of the individual or individuals that are using the tool, right? A hammer can be a very dangerous weapon if someone chooses to use a hammer like a weapon, right? But typically a hammer is used to build things, right? And so that then is what I want you to be reminded of as we, consider natural language processing, AI, and machine learning into the way that we solve problems and answer questions and to develop and facilitate better relationships with one another. Is that natural language processing, machine learning, AI, large language models, these are tools that can be manipulated to ideally develop and build things versus breaking things down, right? And so you can't blame a hammer for the way, in my opinion, the way that someone chooses to use it. right? And so I just want us to all be mindful of that, and that, there are certainly nefarious characters that perhaps are using these tools, and you want to be mindful of that. But typically, a technology or a tool is only as limited as the individual that is using it, right? So I would encourage you to dive deep into natural language processing, into machine learning, and some of these other tools, so that you can begin the process of building things better. And if you are an information or knowledge worker, that then, in my opinion, is your responsibility in understanding your subject matter expertise and how that relates to the problems that the people that you care about are having, so that you can ideally share your information and translate that into knowledge, and then ultimately raise that into wisdom. And when wisdom comes into place, well, that is when we are all doing really great and amazing things. So I'm just, I want to keep us on pace today. So I've got my video outline on one screen, and now that we've gotten our first definition of natural language processing, I'm going to share some examples here in real time, right? So super excited today. We've got 3 case studies that we're going to be working through, and if you're paying attention to my tabs, you've already seen them. You've seen them open, right? In the form of Coursera. That is our first example that we're going to learn a little bit more about, in terms of how Coursera has implemented natural language processing into the way that they provide a more seamless customer service or customer support process. We're going to tap into Uber a little bit, and Uber talks a little bit about they've got an existing case study in the way that they are leveraging natural language processing and customer and merchant reviews, correct, in order to then create more, in order to implement, or to, excuse me, in order to predict and understand problems that are having in their supply chain as it relates to map data. And then, we're going to talk about ChatGPT in real time, and how they're using natural language processing in order to develop better business intelligence and make more informed choices. But before we do, I'm currently taking a course that I would highly recommend that you all get some insight into. Harvard's new Digital Data and Design Institute has offered a learning sprint around AI product management and strategy, which I'm in my second week of this course. It's been pretty awesome already, just in real time, getting a bit of an understanding of how AI and product management can come together in order to create more intelligent human beings. So this is just, consider this to be my ringing endorsement. My instructor, Marilee, is a pretty incredible, highly intelligent, excuse me, professor who has got a ton of experience in the form of AI and product management. The course is officially, again, we've already started, but my assumption is that, based off of just the wealth of knowledge that they're providing, that there will be a new version of it coming up. So please do yourself a favor and to track along. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with our first example of Coursera. And so, just to sort of set the scene, Coursera is a online course or online school for all intents and purposes. And if you haven't been to Coursera before, Coursera.com is a URL, and I'm going to go ahead and give you just the official Wikipedia definition of what Coursera is. But Coursera Inc. is a US-based massive open online course provider founded in 2012 by Stanford University computer science professors Andrew Ng and Daphne Collar. Coursera works with universities and other organizations to offer online courses, certifications, and degrees in a variety of subjects. And so if you are a learner and are interested in learning about something, you see here, I've just initiated or just started an SQL for data science course. But this then has the ability, or this platform has the ability, to help you learn about the things that you want to learn as you begin this process of improving yourself and leveling up your skill set. And as a result of the knowledge that you develop, you then become that much more valuable. And you become that much more valuable, and you can do that many more things. And if you consider the way that knowledge and information was shared, 50 or 60 years ago, typically you'd have to do, lots of schooling in the form of high school and college, and you'd have to, follow alongside the different curriculum that was provided. Um, Whereas, Coursera has offered a new way of learning and doing things, right? Which has led to it being a massively successful tool, right? It's been in business, or Coursera's been in business for over 12 years or over 11 years now, right? And that is, in my opinion, a direct reflection of the value that they add to their customers. Um, Now as it relates to natural language processing and how, that is or is not, you know, um, integral to the platform's success, well, I would make the argument that NLP, or natural language processing, is paramount to the success of the platform and of the tool. And we're going to learn about that here in some different ways. But, if you are a first time learner or student and you're running a search, right, you see here um, natural language processing occurring in real time, where we're seeing what's taking place popular right now. Well, these are the keywords or phrases that people are searching for in the form of machine learning, project management, and data and analytics, which then gives the platform this ability to understand, well, hey, right now we've got a subset of our users, or a large percentage of our users, that are running the same queries in real time for machine learning, project management, and data analytics. So that then gives them a whole bunch of insight into solving those problems in real time for their customers, right? In the form of recommending, excuse me, or having a recommendation algorithm in the form of, hey, well, we've already got classes on machine learning. You should take this one, right? Or if they don't have a course on project management, perhaps they can develop their own course, or, identify a professor who teaches project management and say, hey, sign up for our platform because we can help you earn money based off of the demand that we're seeing in real time, right? Now, the example that we're going to dive into today is a little bit more on customer reviews, which, we'll talk about here in a bit. But, I just want us to just be mindful that AI, machine learning, natural language processing, these have been a part of our tools for quite some time. Now, ChatGPT perhaps is making us painfully aware of, how powerful these tools can be. But again, the reminder is that the tools are only as good as the individuals that are able to, do something or manipulate the information or the context or the content that the tool is able to provide, right? So, the example that we're talking about today is around Coursera and the way that they have then implemented natural language processing, right? Again, the interpretation of the natural language to people in order to develop a self-serve customer service platform, which I'm a really big fan of. And so if we're just sort of, setting the scene here a bit, and, like, let's say that you are a Coursera customer and you work 3 jobs, right? And, you're not making ends meet right now. And so it's super important for you to level up your skill set. You're highly motivated to educate yourself on, a particular subject, data science, right? And you work 3 jobs, and the only time that you have the ability to take your course is at midnight, right? And you have a problem. Coursera is not working for you, and you've got questions. You want somebody to help you troubleshoot the problem, right? And maybe you go back to Coursera and you're looking for the contact us button, and you can't find the contact us button, or maybe you can find the contact us button, but again, it's midnight, so you're not anticipating that you're going to get a response until at least business hours the next day, right? Well, that's a bummer. And if Coursera is not solving my problem in real time, I might just decide to say, I'm going back to college. Forget this, because I know that if I'm in college, I can maybe call my professor at midnight, or I can, call one of my classmates, and they can help me solve the problem that I'm having as it relates to learning about the subject that I want to learn about, so that I can get the job that I want to land, right? Well, based off of Coursera's brilliance, they said, hey, you know what? Well, we don't want you going anywhere else. And we are going to create a help center that is going to allow you to troubleshoot and solve your own problems 24 hours a day, right? And in this knowledge base, we have the information somewhere in here that's going to help you to be able to troubleshoot your problem for yourself, right? Versus having to wait on us. And if you think about that business decision, how brilliant is that? Not only is Coursera solving problems for you, regardless of whether or not, they have a customer service rep, in real time, but they've essentially offloaded this process of solving problems for you, right? By empowering you to solve your own problems. And if you don't have the ability or haven't been able to, uncover ways to solve your problem on your own, well, then perhaps you can elevate to the Coursera team and they can help you to solve your own problem. But, just the sheer fact that they have, and, back in the day, you might have seen like a frequently asked questions, which again, that's very linear, right? And that's stagnant. And, perhaps customers are having problems in real time that the frequently asked questions page hasn't been updated in enough time that allows you to then solve your problem yourself, right? Or again, back in the day, typically you might like send an email or you want to hop on the phone with someone. But as a business, those are very expensive solutions. Hiring and training people is a very expensive solution. And so, one of the brilliant things that Coursera has done and a lot of your other favorite platforms have done is that they've integrated or implemented natural language processing in order to help you solve your own problems. And for all intents and purposes, you are your own best customer service agent because you understand the problem that you're having in real time. And so, if we're just doing a quick example, let's say my course isn't loading, right? And so, based off of these keywords or phrases that I've entered into Coursera's Learner Help Center, all of a sudden I've gotten these results, right? Which, there are some keywords that are associated with these different challenges, right? But based off of, and this is natural language processing occurring in real time, is that based off of the number of queries or number of searches that have used similar language, well, Coursera has done this really great thing in the fact, or excuse me, by developing a database of recommended pages that I can go to that will help me to quickly solve for the problem that I'm having based off of other people who have historically had the same problem, right? This is natural language processing occurring in real time. And if these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 recommendations aren't solving my problem, well, then I can go to see all results, right? And I can see 141 different articles that perhaps can help me to troubleshoot the challenge that I'm having, right? Thereby saving them the headache of having to interact and engage with me in order to solve the problem that I'm having. Now, where the magic really happens, in my opinion, and this is how we start seeing how AI, machine learning, these large language models get more intelligent with time based off of the dynamic nature of user searches, is in the forums, right? And in the forums, this then is when we start seeing other users across the globe who perhaps ran the exact same query that I've run, right? And quite literally, we are then solving the problem for each other in real time. And all that Coursera has done is provided the format, right? So in real time, right? Okay, well, we don't have an article. The Coursera team hasn't written an article that perhaps solves my problem, right? But then my second option is to join an ongoing discussion, right? Or if this is a big enough problem, perhaps I can create a group, right? And if neither of these options, right, and look, well, total here, it's like 144 different options aren't capable of solving my problem for my course isn't loading, well, then maybe I can send a LinkedIn message or send a Facebook message or go on Twitter or perhaps go to one of their alternative channels, right? Or perhaps I can log in and engage with one of their customer service reps. Natural language processing is beautiful, team, and we're seeing here in real time. Now, I wish I had some data regarding how this has saved them time, money, energy, and attention. I don't, unfortunately, have that, but my assumption is that based off of the brilliance of integrating natural language processing and machine learning into their product, into their tool, it saved them buttloads of money, and they've then been able to use those resources in order to create a better product and in order to hire more talented people and ideally to offer more better course content, which is why we're all here, right? Or at least on this particular site. So hopefully this example was helpful. Okay, so we just got done with our Coursera case study, and now we're gonna do a quick walkthrough of an Uber case study. Goodness. So this is a little bit of an older case study. You see here, this is from 2018, which just shows you how early adopting of technologies, which I wouldn't consider us really to be 2018. I wouldn't consider that to be early adoption, right? AI, machine learning, natural language processing. This stuff has been around for a long time, y'all. But that being said, we all know how massively successful Uber is, and a lot of that then is rooted, in my opinion, in the early integration of technology. I mean, it's obviously a technology platform, but then being extremely entrepreneurial in the form of allowing technologies to either prove or disprove themselves as it relates to adding value, right? And then once you're able to make the case that something is able to add value to you and your organization, well, then you can begin the process of more deeply innovating and extracting additional value. So, as it relates to this particular Uber example, what I want us to learn or understand is how natural language processing has then impacted their supply chain, right? And supply chain management specifically. So, broadly, and, I've been able to extract some information here, but we all know, if we're just looking at the market or the platform that Uber is a ride sharing platform or technology that also facilitates delivery. And so if we are then, mindful of what their supply is, they have a supply of users who need to get somewhere or that want to receive things. They have a supply of drivers who are interested in delivering those things and providing rides, right? And inherent, right, to those two things or to that connection is the fact that logistically, the riders and the drivers, they need a road to operate on, because that then is the core business of Uber, getting from point A to point B, right? And as we then consider, what makes Uber tick, we're seeing it here on the screen, it's being able to understand and interpret a map and how a particular map at any given time is able to help facilitate that process of connecting drivers to riders and vice versa as it relates to get moving, right? Uber is a moving business, and that then broadly, again, this can get a lot more nuanced, but that broadly describes their supply chain. And so we can then see why having access to quality maps is so important to Uber's overarching business, right? And I know we like to think that maps are stagnant, but they're not, right? Maps change all the freaking time, right? And let's just sort of be mindful of, like, I'm in the Mojave Desert, and the Mojave Desert has a ton of, a ton of unpaved roads, right? And then as the area begins to grow, there are like unincorporated parts of town that become more incorporated, which means that they get additional resources in the form of helping to fix roads and in the form of traffic lights and stop signs, et cetera, right? And so it behooves Uber to truly understand the map, from like a large scale perspective, and then very, from a micro perspective, and how the overlap of those two things work together, right? What if I want to have an Uber that takes me from Los Angeles to New York, right? Now that might not be as common of a map that they need to understand in real time, but that them just based off of the sheer mileage, helps them to predict how long it's going to take me to find a driver that's willing to drive me that far, right? What the price point is going to be, and then what traffic conditions are going to look like, how long it's going to take me to get from point A to point B, right? Um, and so, the thing that we have to understand is that, depending on, again, that sort of micro version versus that macro version, that then helps Uber to understand, well, the quality of the map and sort of what's going on. And so through this case study, we're just going to quickly learn or understand how natural language processing has helped Uber to understand how to maintain the integrity of said maps based off of what's happening in real time, right? And so a lot of that is rooted in their desire to provide safe and convenient rides, right? That are efficient, right? Because that then directly impacts the price point, um, and that facilitates a fairly even exchange amongst the drivers, the riders, and then if we then branch to their other areas of their business in the form of like Uber Eats and food delivery, and how that works with working with restaurants, right, or some of their delivery partners. And so broadly, natural language processing in the form of customer reviews, both of the drivers, the ridees, or the drivers, the riders, and then the different merchants that they work with and the delivery operators, that then helps them to understand their maps in real time, which then helps them to directly manipulate, understand, and influence the quality of their maps, right? And then broadly, I mean, if we're even taking a step back, also directly helps impact their way of perhaps, interacting with local governments so that they can say, hey, we think that these roads need to be fixed, or we think that you should, build roads here, or, maybe you want to fix this freeway, et cetera, et cetera. Um, so, again, just broadly, the large challenge here is that map data tends to generate over time, and it might not be, maps typically don't change very quickly, right? But they do change with time. And if you look at any given day, right, my assumption is that Uber has some predictive models in the form of the number of traffic accidents that occur in any given day and how that then influences traffic conditions, which then directly tells them, what's going on in a certain region and whether or not getting a ride is more expensive, or if there's demand is more expensive based off of the availability or the traffic conditions, right? Well, that then directly impacts, like, how much a ride should cost, and what the challenges are based off of previous conditions or future conditions in the form of, well, what that area is like should there not be an accident or heavy traffic. And so what they've done is, I mean, it's quite brilliant in that Uber has developed an algorithm for um, being able to leverage natural language processing to interpret very quickly rider, driver, and delivery reviews. So, based off of how riders and drivers are interacting and engaging with one another at any given time, right? Uber will then ask certain questions, perhaps while the ride is taking place, before the ride takes place, perhaps after the ride is taking place, to get an understanding of what the heck is going on, for that particular ride, right? And then what they might then do is, based off of the number of rides or exchanges that happen in a given region, they're then leveraging their collection of those customer reviews or those driver reviews or those rider reviews in order to allow natural language processing to help them begin to interpret and to understand what those riders are communicating about their experience. Now, as that relates to map data, right, they might look at keywords along the form of traffic conditions, or it took my driver a long time to get here, or the price surge was too high, or it was too difficult to get to pick up my rider, right? Now all that language is being housed and collected in a database, right? And what Uber has done in order to then influence their, or be able to then understand how that influences their map conditions, right, or the quality of the map, is they're using an algorithm rooted in natural language processing in order to then understand sentiment analysis, right? What is a user trying to convey, right? And then based off of that interpretation, that then helps them to develop models that can allow teammates, right? Because again, machines are limited to do things, right? Which, in the form of, perhaps, hey, there's a traffic surge here. So we're going to tell all other drivers or riders in this area that perhaps they need to change their behaviors, right? We need you to walk an extra 30, or we need you to walk an extra 5 minutes for a more convenient pickup area or location based off of what other riders are reporting in your area, right? Or, hey, driver, we recommend that you get on the road right now because demand is very high. And that means that you're going to make more money because in that area, there's a traffic accident influencing other drivers that are trying to get to the demand in that particular area. Right. And so, in my opinion, like it's brilliant, right? Uber has the ability to serve 15 million trips per day, is what I believe, right? 15 million trips per day, which is incredible, right? And a lot of that is because they have a pulse on what is most important to their business, which is a map, right? Um, and so, you know, just broadly understanding that all the natural language processing, all the tool is doing is allowing them to aggregate enough keywords or phrases around a particular topic or problem that users are having so that, that sort of triggers or influences the machine saying, hey, it raises its hand, hey, something is happening or going on over here. So that a person, perhaps, or perhaps another machine or another tool can then make recommendations or be able to solve it, that problem in real time. So, broadly, what Uber then has been able to do is develop a proprietary algorithm or several proprietary algorithms um, based off of the unique teams that are then responsible for monitoring said data, right? And that then helped them to create a confidence metric internally, which basically stipulates like, hey, based off of what we're seeing, we have X amount of confidence that you know these 3, 5, 6, 7, whatever solutions could potentially fix or at least um, alleviate some of the challenges that some of our users are experiencing in real time. Which is beautiful in that they've quite literally created a monitoring system rooted in being able to hear and understand the problem that people are having in real time. So I'll be sure to drop the link to this particular case study because I do think that it's very valuable for you to get an understanding of what's going on. But for all intents and purposes, it's brilliant, right? Straight brilliant. Okay, so we just got done with our Uber example, and next up, we're going to talk a little bit about the tool of all tools, ChatGPT, and how ChatGPT is leveraging natural language processing in order to build a more successful business, particularly through this lens of business intelligence. And so, I don't really want to focus today on, or at least for this particular example, on sharing my screen. Hopefully, we can just sort of talk it through. But if you've ever used ChatGPT before, you understand that this is, for all intents and purposes, um, a search platform that is built upon AI, machine learning, natural language processing, and large language models, right? And those then influence the information that you receive and the value that is exchanged both ways of the equation, right? And that you and I are probably having a problem or a question that we want answered, and so we'll navigate over to ChatGPT in order to get the information that we need, right? And in understanding the underlying functionality of the tool, it's understanding that there are probably other people in the world who are trying to ask the platform or ask the tool similar questions, and based off of ChatGPT's ability to interpret the problems that we're all having at scale, that then provides them with a database of responses that they can push out, right? Now, the beauty of, you know, this particular tool is that it learns, it gets better as, more and more people are or feed information into the system, right? And the additional layer of complexity is how ChatGPT, for all intents and purposes, is studying you and me as individuals so that it can render more relevant information based off of the content that they have begun aggregating, the context that they are interpreting based off of the content that we, begun inputting into the system, and for all intents and purposes, what is it they know about us based off of previous interactions and engagements that will then allow them to make predictions on how we want a question answered. And so that then is when we have to be particularly mindful that these tools do have the ability, this particular tool, ChatGPT, but several tools that are similar for implicit bias, right? And something that I want us to all be mindful of is that these are not gods, right? These are not the end all be alls. These are tools that have, a lot of the limitations of a lot of tools that are out in the market today. But that being said, this is arguably ChatGPT is arguably one of the most important tools ever released in human history, and I truly believe that. Um, you know, and the beauty of it is again that the more that you use it, the more that it understands you. So imagine just using that hammer example, right? What if the hammer could understand your exact velocity for nailing in, 3-inch nails versus 6-inch nails, right? Or 12-inch nails, right? Like it's almost like the hand isn't separate from you, or the hammer isn't separate from you at that standpoint. It's working, it's almost like an extension of you, and it begins to understand you as an individual. Um, Now, what we have to be mindful of, in my opinion, is that, as it relates to business intelligence, and this is where privacy concerns start coming in, is that, you know, and I would encourage you to research and study ChatGPT's privacy policy and user agreements. Um, but it's sort of like this double-edged sword in that, well, they need you to use a tool and to collect information and data on you in order for the tool to be that much richer for you. However, in order to protect themselves legally, they then have to own that data, right? And based off of the queries, the keywords, the searches, the phrases that you run, I mean, for all intents and purposes, they own that information to do what they want with it, right? Which typically comes in the form of, if you know anything about digital product development, in the form of understanding you as a unique user to then begin the process to model other products, services, features that might be interesting to you that can ultimately get you to pay more money for things, right? Which, perhaps it's a premium version of ChatGPT, or, you know, now the deeper level of that is that the more that they understand about you as an individual, um, they perhaps can begin the process of aggregating your queries, your information, in order to develop new things, right? So using Google as an example, you know, Google maybe they notice that 100 or a million of their users, or I know it's a wide gap, but let's say a million of their users were all searching keyword every month in the form of keywords in the form of restaurant reviews in my town, right? Or restaurant reviews Los Angeles, which, hey, this is a problem. People are using our platform to find reviews, and no one is giving them the relevant results that they have. So we are going to create our own review product, right? And there's a product in the market called Google My Business that restaurants and other merchants have the ability to pay for, right? Now, all Google is doing is aggregating people's queries, right? And then based off of their business intelligence, they're then able to interpret and decide what features or what extensions of Google as a product they can begin to develop and iterate off of in order to make more money, right? So we have to be very careful with the way that we interact and engage with ChatGPT, particularly as they get better at understanding what you mean by certain things, right? And so if you're like a lot of other startups and entrepreneurs out there, or, organizations, perhaps you're entering very specific data or running very specific keywords or queries into the platform based off of the unique problem or challenge that you are trying to solve for. Well, over time, in addition to having a stronger profile for who you are, they might be able to say, okay, well, I understand that this is a director of digital operations, or this is, a restaurant owner, or this is a writer, or this is a videographer who is having this problem. Um, for all intents and purposes, they might just be able to start taking some of your ideas in order to in order to create products and services and launch entire new businesses, enterprises, et cetera, et cetera. And some of this stuff is happening in real time in the form of, we're hearing, organizations really take the privacy aspect of this particular tool very seriously, and that there have been examples of coders, developers who have perhaps submitted proprietary code into the tool in order, or perhaps customer data into the tool in order to solve for a problem. And the challenge then is that, for all intents and purposes, ChatGPT, OpenAI, they own this data, right? And so, from their perspective, I mean, they just created a really great tool, and hopefully, we can, and perhaps this is the altruism in me. We want to just be able to trust it with everything, but in reality and practice, for being pragmatic, we want to be pretty careful about the way that we are using this tool. And that then goes back to some of the broader philosophies and recommendations that you've heard me make before, in the form of, what are the tools that you're using? And as you're assessing the tools that you're using, what are your rules for engagement? And a lot of that comes in the form of understanding, what the tool is, how you plan on leveraging it, and then understanding, some of the underlying policies that allow you to use the tool based off of, the tool's desire to be compliant from a legal perspective, right? Which they have to cover their own butts. So, again, ChatGPT has done an excellent job of creating, a highly sophisticated business intelligence tool, which then allows them to iterate and create new products and services based off of their interpretation and understanding of you, right? Based off of the keywords, phrases, et cetera, that helps them to understand who you are, the problem that you're having, and to then render the data, right, the information that is going to solve or answer the question that you have. Okay, so we just got done with our ChatGPT case study. I'm going to quickly walk you through some considerations as it relates to natural language processing and your organization, or the way that you want to implement and integrate NLP into your system. And then we'll go ahead and get on out of here. So hopefully you're able to learn, my opinion from that ChatGPT example, why it's so important to, have a privacy policy in place as it relates to your natural language processing strategy. And that begins and ends with the way that you treat and store data, both your proprietary data, and then your customer data, right? And then your standards for keeping that data, right? And that then directly leads to, another consideration, which is scalability, and they all sort of work in collaboration, right? You need to have a policy around your data and privacy considerations, right? Because that then teaches you how you need to store said data, right? And then based off of your rules around storing said data, that is going to directly impact the way that your organization is able to scale, because that information has to live somewhere, right? If you ever use a tool like Dropbox or Google Cloud, perhaps you're using hardware, or, servers, or using virtual servers, right? But that data needs to live somewhere. And so if you then sort of consider the intersection of those three things, right, it's then being mindful that there are nefarious characters that are out there that are trying to, they're trying to access your data, right? They want it. And that, in the digital age in 2023, we see that information, data, knowledge, wisdom, That's as good as currency, right? And so as we are, being mindful that, while NLP is powerful, it's powerful for a reason because it provides very sensitive information around people, right? So that we can, begin the process of solving problems for them. So, in terms of like tips and best practices, I just want to continue to encourage you to select the right tools, to train your employees, right? And then create standards around data governance. And these are processes that are never ending. You constantly want to be training employees. You constantly want to be, you want to constantly scrutinizing your tools, and you want to constantly be revisiting your data governance strategy. Because, as the tools get better and more sophisticated, people get better and more sophisticated, and that then exposes some vulnerabilities that you want to be mindful of. And so it then is just, this process of making sure that your house is in order, right? So hopefully today's lesson was helpful. Again, we are capping our week around natural language processing and how that then influences, best practices and the way that you can create a robust strategy rooted in AI, machine learning, and solving problems for your stakeholders. We went through 3 case studies or examples in the form of Coursera and how they're leveraging natural language processing from a customer support perspective. We discussed Uber and how Uber leverages NLP for supply chain management. And then we talked about ChatGPT and how ChatGPT is leveraging natural language processing from a business intelligence perspective. So again, I encourage you, like, dive into NLP. This stuff is awesome. It's amazing. The human brain, communication, information, knowledge. It's fascinating, right? But if you're a Spider-Man nerd, you then begin to understand that with great power comes great responsibility. And I want you to be equally as aware of, your responsibility as it relates to implementing and influencing your organization with this very powerful tool and methodology. So, definitely encourage you to explore integrating NLP into your enterprise or for into your workflow, your value stream as an individual. I've got some resources that I'm going to drop into, whether you're watching this video on YouTube or LinkedIn, I'll be sure to drop some resources into the comments or the description for you to check out on your own terms. Feel free to follow me on LinkedIn or on YouTube. Just search for Terrence Latimer, or be sure to navigate to my new website, terrenclatimer.com, where you can find additional information about some of the work that I do around information, communications, and technology. But I hope you found this information to be valuable, and looking forward to serving you in the future. Take care.